This cabinet is so weird. Billy puts his toys in, just before he closed the door, for a blink of an eye. When he opened it again, the toy figures came to life. This made him very curious. He reached out to touch the little wild man. Instead, he drew his weapon. Billy immediately withdrew his hand. From the viewpoint of the little wild man, the boy looked like a giant, but when he reached out again, the savage tried to protect himself. Billy stabbed him hard. Luckily, after a conversation between the two, Billy was not a bad man. He slowly let his guard down, in order to survive here. Caveman jumped on the back of Billy's hand in January, and willingly became his little brother. Billy had found a toy tent, for the wild man to sleep in. To his dismay, the tent material was too hard. Then Billy thought of the cupboard, putting the plastic tent inside, immediately closing the door. When he opened it again, the tent had come to life. He set up a place for the wild man, and thinking it must all be an illusion, so he dug out the basket of toys under the bed. One by one, he put them in the cupboard. The toys didn't have time to react. Immediately he closes the window of the cupboard. When he opened it again, and his jaw dropped in amazement, the toys inside were beating up in the back of the box, and the little cabinet was shaking. When the toys came to their senses and turned their weapons on Belgium, he was so scared that he closed the door. By morning, when the big tree outside the window caught the wild man's attention, Billy packed the wild man into a shoebox, and took it straight out into the yard. The wild man stepped out of the shoebox and looked. The trees and flowers outside were taller than he was. Billy wanted to build him a house, while looking for materials. When he heard the birds chirping, he rushed out to chase the birds away. The wild man returned home. He found that he had been injured by the bird. Billy rushed to get a toy medic and put him in a cupboard. When the door opened, the medic reappears. The boy's toy figurine is injured. He looked at the little man's bleeding thigh. He had a brainstorm. He came up with a great way to treat it. He got a medic and put it in the cupboard. Then the door closed and opened. The little man came to life instantly. Then Billy took the medic and brought him to the little man. He asked him to help with the treatment. Billy watched with a magnifying glass. Soon the little man was cured by the medic. Then Billy put the medic in the cupboard. The door closed and opened. The medic turned back into a plastic toy. Then Billy started to help the little man build his cottage. Then the little man told him he needed an axe. So Billy found a little man with an axe and put it in. Before the little man could react, Billy just took the axe away. And then he turned the little man back into a man. Then Billy gave the axe to the little man. The little man was happy to build a house. Soon the big house was finished. Billy looked at the big house in front of him. He felt that the little man was too lonely, so he tried to bring back another toy man to keep him company. But the old man was too old. He looked at the huge figure of Billy. He was scared out of his wits. Billy had no choice but to bring back a deer, so the little man hunted and played. One day, Billy brought his best friend Big Strong to his house, and told him the secret of the cupboard. Little did he know that when Billy was downstairs, he put a West Side Cowboy toy in the cupboard. As soon as he opened the door, a cowboy on a horse rushed out, but it was a cowboy with a dizzy horse. After a few turns on the table, he came right down. Then Billy arrived just in time to catch him. That's when the cowboy saw the little man again. He grabbed his gun and started shooting. Billy picked him up in a hurry. Then he put the cowboy in a drawer, and he went to bed. But early the next morning, Billy was woken up again. It turned out that the little man and the cowboy had fought again. The two toy figures got into a fight. Billy rushes to break up the fight, separating the two. But Billy was in a hurry to get to school. He was worried that they would get into a fight again, so he put them in his school bag, and took them with him to school. Billy was very careful on the way, for fear of shaking them to death with too much movement. But when they got to school, his friend wanted to show off the figures to his classmates. Billy was determined not to. A confrontation broke out between the two. The teacher came over and asked what was going on, and asked to check the contents of his pockets. Luckily, the little man was disguised as a toy, so the teacher didn't find out. When they got home from school, Billy took out another pretty girl and tried to resurrect her, to give to the wild man as a wife. The cowboy was not happy to hear this. He said he wanted one too, but just as he was about to put it in the wooden cupboard, he found that the wooden cupboard had disappeared. It turned out that his brother had hidden her. Billy searched every corner. He finally found the box in the kitchen, but it had fallen into a crack in the floor. Billy tried to pick it out with his hands. Even picking at it with a knife didn't work, and that's when the wild man got a bit fed up with it. In order to have someone else to sleep with tonight, he went down through a crack in the floor, but it wasn't long before a dark shadow flashed through the crack. This was the end. Just as Billy thought the wild man had been eaten, a cry for help came through the crack. Billy rushed to put his finger in, and rescued the wild man, and the key to the wooden cupboard came up with him, but just to catch his breath. At night they were watching TV. The TV was showing cowboys hunting primitives, watching his companions being killed one after another. The wild man was furious. He raises his bow and arrow and shoots the cowboy. Billy turned off the TV, resurrecting the healer. Luckily, he was rescued just in time. He saved his life. The wild man realized his mistake. He looked after him with care and attention. It was then that Billy finally realized they didn't belong here after all. They should go back to the world where they belong. After a brief farewell, the two of them posed. Although Billy was sad to see them go, but he closed the magic box, and turned the two back into hand puppets. If you had a cabinet like this, what would you resurrect?